Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the REWIRED Fitness Podcast. My name is Kevin, and today I'm going to go over ADHD skills that can be seen as advantages. I want to go over this because I think there are some skills that we may be missing when we have ADHD, and you're looking at things and you're seeing a lot of the negative, but there are positives to it too. And I want to go over things that I think can be a positive for you when you have ADHD. And I think that will help you in your daily life as well. All you have to do is look at it in a different way and see where the advantage is within these different skills. Okay, before I get into that, go ahead and click the subscribe button for me and click the notification bell. That's if you want to support this YouTube channel, if you want to support the podcast. That is one of the best ways to support it. I really appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, also leave a like and a comment. All right, let's get into it. One of the things I think people don't see as an advantage, but is really a great advantage, is being able to walk into a room and just scan the environment. You are walking into this room, you may be going over to talk to a person may be talking to you, and you are looking into the back behind them to find what is interesting and what is not so interesting. And the great thing about this is that you are taking a lot of information in from the room. And so, hey, you might seem to be distracted by a person that's talking to you. Like that person may say, wow, you're really distracted. But in the back of everything else, you are scanning the room, trying to find what's interesting and what is not interesting. And this allows you to take in a lot of information. You'll see things in the room that other people may not notice. You'll see things that other people in the room might not even think of, or a person in the room that people may not notice something about them that you notice specifically about them. And so I think this is a great skill to have, because if you can walk into the room, scan it, and then get all this information, then you have a lot of information at your disposal to kind of make decisions. And you may say, well, I get overwhelmed when I do this. When I scan around the room looking for something interesting, I don't find something, my attention shifts. But still, this is a skill. This is something that you can use to your advantage. Now, I'll give you an example. I watched the movie with Jason Bourne in it, and he's like this spy, and he is a military spy or something of that nature, right? What he does is when he walks into a room, the first thing that you see him do in a room is see him scanning where are the exits, where are the bad guys, where are the possible traps, where are things that I can use to get away if I need to, what are things I can use to beat up the bad guys. All these things are calculations that he is going through in his head as he's walking into the room. And so you see to where this can be an advantage, it can be a skill. It could be something that you can use to your advantage. I think it's a great skill to have, is just being able to come into a room, look at everything, find the things that are interesting and not interesting, or find the things like in the Jason Bourne type movies, like that way, and find the things that are not so much an interest to you in the other way, right? The other way that you look around the room and say, okay, this is not interesting, but this over here is what I need to know, the information I need to know. So I think for me, I think that is a great skill to have. The next one is going to be curiosity. And this is more of a trait than a skill, but I really think that you can use it to your advantage. And the reason I say that is because since you are curious when you have ADHD, and there's high probability that you're really curious because you're working off that interest-based system where, hey, is this interesting to me? Is that interesting to me? What about this? What about that? I'm really curious about if this is going to be interesting or not. And so when you have ADHD, you are always curious about different things and what's new and what's not new. And, oh, I've never done this, but I'm curious about it. Oh, I've never done this. Let's go over here and see about this thing. Even though I may have my attention on one of these things, let's go see over here about this way or thing that I am looking at that may be more interesting than this first thing. And so I think curiosity is great because it helps you kind of prompt you to move towards things, to go and say, hey, go over here and see if this is interesting. Go over here and see what you think about this. Go over here and see what you think about that. And that is one of the most amazing skills about having ADHD, or the most amazing things about having ADHD, is because generally you are curious about a lot of things and a lot more things than the average person is. And so that helps you to kind of get more knowledge, experience more things. You probably have more knowledge about one thing than someone else has because just of the fact that you were curious to go look it up at some point and say, oh, wow, this is amazing. Or, oh, wow, I never want to even think about this thing again because it's not that interesting. So just think about that. Think about curiosity and how it can be an advantage for you. And think about how much it can help you on a daily basis. Just saying, okay, I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but I know these few things are interesting. I'm going to be curious about this one and go towards this one. I'm going to be curious about that one and go towards that one. Let me know what you think about that, because I think curiosity is a great advantage to have. The next one is going to be creativity and inspiration. And creativity includes outside the box thinking, which is a skill that people seek in a lot of different jobs. And this is one that you can use throughout your day. You can just use it to find creative ways to do things, or look at something in a different way because you're thinking outside the box and you're not thinking just within the constraints. You're thinking about, hey, what if I try this? Is this going to work? I don't know if it's going to work, but maybe it will. And that's outside the box thinking. Or you're somewhere and you just get inspired by something you see, by something you hear, by something you experience. You're just out there and saying, wow, this has given me a lot of inspiration. This happens a lot of time with me when I go walking. I'm out in nature. I see something and say, wow, that's inspiring. This gives me an idea for this or this, right? These are two things that I'm looking at, and I just got an idea for one, and I think it might work for the other one. And now I am inspired. So think about that. Think about how creative you are, how creative you can be, how much of an outside the box thinker that you are, how much you are inspired by different things. And these are all things that you can use in your everyday life to figure out ways to do different things, such as maybe clean up your room or organize things differently. Different ideas of how to do it, different ideas of how your specific way saves time, or is the way that you have to do it because of these different things that prevent you from doing it another way. Think about that. Think about that when you have ADHD, that you have a high probability of being a creative person and an outside the box thinker, and someone who sees inspiration or becomes inspired by different events and things of that nature. The next one is going to be that you deliver information quickly, or you can deliver information quickly. And the reason I think this is a great advantage and is a skill that can be used as an advantage is this. Now you may think, hey, that sounds like oversharing. Oversharing is not good. I overshare sometimes. People look at me like a deer in headlights and are taken aback that I put out so much information in a short amount of time, and they really wanted to know one thing, a very short answer. On the flip side, say you're an EMT, say you have an EMT team, say you're trying to help with someone, say you're trying to also communicate to dispatch. How are you going to do that unless you can deliver information quickly? And so you see there is an advantage, there is a skill there. And you can develop that skill. You can say, hey, I deliver information quickly. Let me develop the skill. So not only can I deliver the information quickly, but I can give that information in a really good way, or give instructions in a good way as well. And now that thing that you thought was a disadvantage is now an advantage that you can use in many different situations, that you can then see, wow, this actually is really cool and really good. Now that I've kind of worked on this a bit and I kind of know how to keep oversharing under a bit of control, I can use this to my advantage. So just think about that. Next time you're thinking about, hey, why do I say things so quick? Is there a way I can use this? Think back to the example I gave of the EMT. and think of other examples where you could use this same ability. And then you can look at it as an advantage and not so much of a disadvantage. Another thing I think that is a skill is going to be that you can determine whether you like something really quickly or not, which is great because there are a lot of things that I've experienced or went to and said, I might like this, maybe, and then I do it and get there, whatever, and experience it. And then I just kind of say, I don't know if I like it or not. I don't know if it'll be better tomorrow. Maybe try it again. And all that can be a bad situation because you're just wasting time in some cases, right? But when you have ADHD, you can say, hey, I know this is not interesting. This is really interesting. This over here, maybe, not sure. Could be interesting. This over here, really interesting. So you can just look at something, go towards something and say, I don't think it's interesting right now. I don't think it's interesting. And I may not even think it's interesting later. But this over here is interesting. This is a thing that I want to go and see. I have this in the back of my mind to come back and look at this, but this right now is what I want to do, is what I want to look at, is what I want to know. That is what is interesting to me. This is what is kind of interesting to me. And this thing behind me, I have no interest at all. And you can decide that very quickly when you have ADHD and you think, well, okay, but does that really count as a skill or disadvantage? It does, because you're making a decision and you're making it quickly. Okay, next, impulsivity is good. I think this is one of the best things to think about. I did a podcast on impulsivity not too long ago, so you can go look that one up as well. But this is talking about why impulsivity is good. Impulsivity is good because of the fact that if you're curious about something, if you're thinking about something, if you're going somewhere and saying, I really want to do this thing, but kind of scared, don't really want to try to do it right now, maybe later, impulsivity will say, hey, you want to do this thing? Go ahead and do it. So you end up at the place where you're like, man, I wasn't going to do it, but now, yeah, I think I will. And so you're being impulsive. Now, here's the caveat to this. Don't let impulsivity kind of take the reins and have you in bad places that you probably should not be, or dealing with things that could have been avoided if you just not been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or done something that was way, way far off. Just a little bit of impulsivity. It's impulsivity, but it's impulsivity on a much higher level, which is not what I'm talking about. But generally, impulsivity is good because it helps you take risk. It helps you say, hey, I'm going to try that, and then you go try it. It helps you to say, I'm not really fearful of that. I know that I'm going to have fun. I know that I've kind of wanted to always do it and not have the opportunity to do it. And so at that point, you're like, okay, I'm impulsive. I want to do it. I'm going to go ahead and think about it. But if I think about it too hard, then maybe I won't do it. But right now, I want to do it. And I'm going to do it before I give it a second thought. And that is what the most amazing thing about it is that impulsivity is not all bad. It can be good. And because when you have ADHD, you have a tendency to be impulsive, you can use that as a skill to your advantage and moving things forward. Okay, next is going to be on the fly adjustments. And what I mean by that is that you have to make an adjustment just in a split second. No prep, no going to look something up, no saying, hey, slow down a little bit. This is about making an adjustment real time, split second, and it's going to determine the failure or success of something you're trying to do. And so I think people with ADHD could be great or can be great at it. The reason is impulsivity. Definitely need impulsivity to implement whatever adjustment you're trying to make. 2, you need to be able to bring new ideas in quickly, to come up with them quickly, to actually say, hey, this is my issue. I need to fix this and this and this, and this right here should do that even though I need to change this as well to make sure that that works. And so you're thinking about all the different things that you need for an on the fly adjustment. And those are all things that can be skills when you have ADHD. Those are all the things of traits and things that you may need that people with ADHD are good at. And so I say it's not really a trait, it's definitely a skill, and you learn it over time. But as you learn it, you get better and better at it. And then that enables you to use all your ADHD skill set and be able to make the on the fly adjustment very quickly and be an expert at it as well. So I think that's one of the good things. I think that on the fly adjustments is definitely one of the skills that people with ADHD can do because of the fact that it requires so much of creativity, outside the box thinking, and a fast mind as well. The next thing I want to talk about, and I've talked about this before, is going to be resiliency. And it's definitely a skill. It may come as a trait, or you may think about it as a trait, but it is really a skill. The fact that you can get up again, the fact that you can be put down or be beat down or whatever, right? And be trying and not achieve the thing you want to achieve. And people tell you you can't achieve it and you'll never be able to do this. You'll never be able to do that. And then you keep getting up and trying again. And that is resiliency. And it is a trait, but it's also a skill to learn because not everyone can do it. And I know that people with ADHD can do it because they've had to hear so many different things throughout their life. And they've had to overcome a lot of challenges, and not only overcome a lot of challenges, but find their own way a lot of times to overcome those challenges instead of just the normal way that society has said, hey, this is a normal way that you solve this. When you have ADHD, you might have to do it another way to make sure that you can complete it, because the first way doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to you, or the first way just isn't working for you. And so you come up with a different concept, a different way to do that same thing and get to the same answer, which is fine. It doesn't matter that you took a different path to get there, as long as you get there. And so I think that with everything that someone with ADHD has to go through throughout their childhood, adulthood, teenage years, whatever, through all those different things, all those different phases of life, there are going to be times where you have to be resilient. And people that I know that have ADHD are some of the most resilient people that I know. And I think that's great. I think it's a skill. I think it's something you can use to your advantage, because when you get down and you're like, oh, I don't feel so much motivated to do this or that, you can just look at it and say, yeah, but I've done this before and I accomplished this and I got the victory. So I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep moving forward and being able to get to my final goal. So that's one thing that I think is definitely a skill with someone with ADHD. And the last one I think that is definitely a skill is support. And what I mean by that is when you have ADHD, one, you either ask for support, which means you're asking for help. And that's a skill, because a lot of times, hey, you don't want to ask for help. A lot of people would not ask for help. And that can be a real issue, because if you're struggling and you need help, then there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But the other side of it is support for other people with ADHD. I've met a lot of people with ADHD and they're all supportive of other people with ADHD. And so you might be that person that supports another person with ADHD, just giving them some advice or some friendly words, or just being there for them in general, just being supportive. And all of the people with ADHD that I see or come across are very, very supportive of everyone in the ADHD community. And that is the best thing, is that it's definitely a skill for you to be able to show support, to ask for support, to be that one that someone comes to just get some general support, to say, hey, you can do this, you can get through this, you can do whatever you need to do. And that's what I'm here for, is just to help you and give you some encouragement along the way. Okay, thank you for watching. That's all the information I have for you today. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast or this video if you're watching on YouTube. I hope the information is helpful. I hope that you share this video or podcast with others so that they can also see the same or hear the same information as well. Thank you again, and I will talk to you later.